in Palestine, the Rafah border was open to allow humanitarian exit from the Gaza Strip into Egyptian territory. The General Assembly of the United Nations holds its 24th plenary meeting addressing the need of ending the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States against Cuba. In Honduras, the Permanent Commission of the Congress appoints the new interim authorities of the Republic Prosecutor's Office. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. For the first time since October the 7th, the Rafah border was open to allow humanitarian exit from the Gaza Strip to the Egyptian territory. Qatar has mediated an agreement between the Egyptian, Palestinian, and Israeli authorities to allow the ambulances to enter the Gaza Strip today to pick up seriously wounded people for treatment in Egyptian health centers. At the same time, around 500 people holding foreign passports were allowed to leave the devastated Palestinian enclave. The agreements mediated by Qatar is not linked to other issues under the negotiations, such as the release of hostages or the humanitarian truce. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights said that Israel's attack on the Jabalia refugee camp that left thousands dead could amount to war crimes. The official Volker Turk also denounced that the Israeli attack represents a crime due to the high number of civilian victims. In this regard, the Palestinian Health Ministry reported a total of 8,720 Palestinians killed and more than 22,000 wounded in 25 days of Israeli bombardment in the Gaza Strip. Israel carries out a new bombing, this time in the city of Khan Yunis, where several areas were totally destroyed, leaving also a large number of people wounded and dead behind.
We are here in the city of Khan Yunis, in an area that suffered great destruction, an entire residential quadrant destroyed by Israeli warplanes. You can also see a large number of houses that have been targeted by Israeli warplanes that fired their missiles, causing the fall of a large number of dead and wounded.
They bombed our neighbor's house and our next door house collapsed, as if it were an earthquake. The damage is huge, with just one bombardment. A great disaster. Look, 6 buildings, that is almost the whole area. And that building over there was also damaged, and there were deaths.
How would you describe what happened?
For God's sake, this is genocide. We don't know why. It's a war we have never seen or heard of.
Targeting residential neighborhoods is an Israeli policy that Israel has initiated since the beginning of this aggression. So it is not targeting one place, but launching large masses of fire that cause destruction to the whole residential square. As you can see, most of the destruction shows that Israel is using powerful and highly explosive weapons that cause serious damage to all these residential homes, with the intention of causing immense damage to the place.
This is our house. They bombed our neighbor's house and our house fell next door. We want to take our things out of the house, but we cannot. It is a very difficult situation.
Is Israel intentionally targeting these locations?
Yes, wherever you go, they hit. When you attack, you don't distinguish between civilians or resistant fighters. We are defenseless citizens. We are people sitting in our homes and bombed.
Destroying entire residential neighborhoods, which house such a large number of children, represents a war crime, and Israel takes the lives of many children through its violent bombardments, which cause great destruction in Khan Yunis, in the southern Gaza Strip. Ahmed Ghanem, Gaza, Al Mayadeen for teleSUR.
Rafah City opened its borders on the 26th day of the conflict, allowing the departure of people with dual nationality and wounded to be treated abroad. For more details, our correspondent Huda Higazi.
After 26 days of heavy confrontations with the Zionist occupation army in this conflict called the Al-Aqsa Flood, for the first time the border has been opened to allow the evacuation of a number of wounded from the Gaza Strip from treatment abroad in Egypt, and a number of Palestinians with dual nationality have also been allowed to leave to evacuate the Gaza Strip and head to Egypt to travel to their countries of origin. So far, according to Palestinian sources, at least 20 ambulance cars
de que al menos 20 coches de ambulancia que llevaban alrededor de unos 80 heridos
carrying some 80 wounded have been evacuated from the Gaza Strip so that the wounded can receive treatment abroad. There are also some 300 Palestinians of dual nationality who have been allowed to evacuate the Strip to return to their home countries, and even 20 trucks of humanitarian aid have entered through the Rafah border, crossing to cover the needs caused by this conflict. But, unfortunately, this amount is an insufficient quantity for all the shortage in the Gaza Strip, especially in the health sector, and unfortunately, neither these 20 trucks
es una cantidad insuficiente para todas las carencias que posee la Franja de Gaza, sobre todo el sector sanitario, y lamentablemente
nor the previous 160 trucks that entered during the previous week carried full, and even the amount of medical supplies and medicines was minimal and could not cover for the shortage in this sector. The health sector is still in serious crisis, and there are even central hospitals in the Gaza Strip, such as the Turkish hospital, which have had to close their doors, in addition to 20 other hospitals and medical centers.
Let's take a very short break, but remember, you can now join us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. At the 24th plenary session of the United Nations General Assembly held to address the blockades against Cuba, Yasir Aliyev, a permanent representative of Azerbaijan, denounced that the blockade is an example of how unilateral measures affect the welfare of peoples.
Mr. President, the non-aligned movement has historically held a principled position of rejecting unilateral coercive measures that are not authorized by the relevant organs of the United Nations, that are inconsistent with the principles of international law or the Charter of the United Nations, or that contravene the basic principles of the multilateral trading system, and that are used as a tool of political or economic and financial pressure against states, in particular developing countries. The embargo on Cuba is precisely as example of the adverse effects of unilateral coercive measures on the well-being of peoples, preventing them, among others, from fully enjoying and realizing their human rights, including the right to development.
I thank the distinguished representative.
Filbert Aaron, permanent representative of the Commonwealth of Dominica to the United Nations, highlighted the negative consequences that the U.S. blockade has had on different sectors of the Cuban society.
The Cuban economy has come under extraordinary pressures, reflected in industry, service provision, retail trade, food and medicine shortages, and a decline in the consumption levels and general welfare of the Cuban population. In recent months, systematic efforts have been made to attain energy stability under very complex situations, given the insufficient readiness of power plants resulting from the lack of fuel, spare parts, and other essential resources for their repair and maintenance.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative.
The permanent representative of the Russian Federation, Vasily Lembesia, on behalf of his country, denounced that the US is trying to establish a model of what democracies and authoritarian regimes are.
The actions of the United States and their allies in introducing unilateral illegal sanctions in circumvention of the UN Security Council are openly neocolonial in character and are based on systematic attempts to persecute and suppress undesirable regimes around the world, while hypocritically imposing sanctions against the countries and entire peoples as a way of using non-military means to react to crimes against humanity and fulfilling their international obligations. The U.S. prefers not to notice the horrific consequences of their own actions, which lead to the most severe humanitarian consequences for ordinary people around the world. The anti-Cuban embargo is an excellent example of the foreign pressure by Washington in the spirit of the rebirth of the Monroe Doctrine, which is General Assembly. Thank you very much.
The permanent representative of South Africa to the United Nations points out that the U.S. blockade against Cuba continues to be a major impediment to commercial relations between the two countries.
Mr. President, United States sanctions represents a major impediment for South African companies in conducting business with Cuba. Nevertheless, the relations between South Africa and Cuba continue to serve as a successful model of South-South cooperation. South Africa has recommitted to expanding its existing bilateral cooperation programs with Cuba, as well as to pursue new areas of cooperation, such as in infrastructure development, agriculture, and science and technology.
I thank the distinguished representative.
In Honduras, the Permanent Commission of the Congress appointed the new interim authorities of the Public Prosecutor's Office. The commission, led by the President of the Legislature, Luis Redondo, sworn-in Joel Zelaya as Interim Attorney General and Manuel Morazan as Internal Deputy Attorney General. This, while the necessary consensus is reached for the legislature to appoint the authorities of the public agency. In Panama, the repression of demonstrators who reject the mining contract continues, while police officers arrest several teachers. Members of the Panama Teachers Association indicate that the educators were arrested where they were protesting in solidarity with a colleague who had been arrested. Likewise, during the altercation, a lawyer of the association was also arrested while demanding the prompt release of all those deprived of their freedom. Of shifting topics, the 15th date of the Pan American Games Santiago 2023 was marked by different sporting events. Our journalist in Chile, Eduardo Regonesi, tells us details and the results of the events that took place.
Are shaking up inside the Chilean football team after the female squad secured their spot on the finals of the Pan American Games in Santiago, Chile. Not only the Chilean captain Christiane Endler announced she's retiring, but she is leaving the team to rejoin Olympique Lyon, the club team in France. Since it is not a FIFA date, Chile cannot retain her. Antonia Canales, her replacement, was called as well, leaving Chile to face Mexico next Friday with no goalkeeper.
I'm happy. I'm very happy. The goal is almost accomplished. In the previous match, I said we wanted to secure a direct medal for Chile. We have already secured half of it. Now we have to fight for the goal. I feel that when you are abroad and you come to Chile, it makes you a little angry that we are the only country that retains a player of 31 years being the visible face of Chilean women's soccer. Not only women's soccer, but Chilean soccer worldwide, always leaving a good image. And sometimes it's a little sad that abroad they love her and value her more than in our country.
Chile and Mexico on the men's side will also look for a spot on the final when they face the United States and Brazil. Wrestling started Wednesday morning with the first matches happening, while during afternoon the finals and semifinals will take place, with an eye on what Osmani Diverescent will do against Argentine Almendra. In athletic actions, the 100-meter hurdles finals and 400-meter race will give out gold medals today. In morning action in male volleyball, on group stage, Brazil defeated Cuba, while Colombia beat Mexico, moving on to quarterfinals, waiting for a rival that's going to come from the matches between Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and Chile versus Argentina. For TeleSUR Deportes, Bastián Merino and Eduardo Aragonesi.
Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, where you'll be able to watch interviews, top stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and active the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. When final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Serbian President Aleksandar Subic said December 17th as the date for the early parliamentary elections, which will be the third vote in the blanking country in nearly 4 years. The election date came as no surprise as the Serbian leader that had been campaigning in favor of the office of ruling Serbian Progressive Party for weeks, although he has formally stepped down from its helm. Local elections will also be held on the same date in several municipalities, including Belgrade, the capital.
Respected citizens of Republic of Serbia, I wish you happy elections. We are living in times that are difficult for the whole world, in a time of global challenges, wars and conflicts. In a time in which it is necessary for us all to be united in the fight to preserve the vital national and state interests of the Republic of Serbia, in a time in which we will be under many pressures, both in our relationship with Kosovo and Metohija, and also because of other regional and world issues.
Manuel Menendez is a big fan of TeleSUR. Lately, he rode to Cuba on the move to share his history. Manuel is the president and founder of a classic motorcycle club, which aims at driving motorcycles with decades of manufacturing and keeping it active, not as a museum pieces, but as a locomotive means of admiration for those who appreciate the value of a historical jewel.
There is no better way to know the story of a classic motorcycles club leader than to arrive at the encounter in one of them. Cuba on the Move program is recording this time while rolling up across the streets of Havana on one of the old jewels of the ZZ Jawa Classic United Motorcycle Cubans Club. They are the club members, who have a meeting similar to this one every month to discuss common concerns. Its president, Manuel Menendez, says he created this project 7 years ago as an alternative family for the common good of passionate friends about motorcycles like this.
This is the most ancient one from 1948. But it still works, counting up with a high percentage of its original parts. In addition to ZZ Jawa, we have other brands, as the German Simpson Classic and older Simpson. The latter is out there, very nice, very classic. We are Cuban CSZ Jawa and United Classic Club. We collect all the old motorcycles which were made 50 to 60 years ago.
The ZZ and Jawa motorbikes from Czechoslovakian origin got here in the waves of motorcycle coming from the socialist countries in the early 1960s. Hence, Cubans call it the motorbike of the Cuban working class family, as it used to be delivered as a stimulus for workers and peasants. Today, Manuel is one of those trying to revive the historical automotive and social legacy of the last 60 years with these versatile vehicles.
These bikes are very resistant. They are not fast since they are not designed for speed. There's a saying, they are not fast, but they go far. And I would add, they go far, but not only in distance, but also in time.
Mario, the club's vice president, points out that since the socialist camp had no longer existed, Czech motorcycles ceased to be manufactured, but his bike survived the ravages of time, counting up with 95% of its originality. He assures Cuba's history could be learned by delving into a CC or Jawa motorbike.
These motorbikes were used here by postmen, pharmacies, messengers in the 1960s, meaning and for authorities workers on the 1970s, sugarcane harvest, particularly moving and counting up goods. Even these bikes enter the cane field like a person. Bikes have been used for going to work and on a drive, for everything.
Manuel is a technician in industrial mechanical design. Although he has been working in tourism for 29 years, design is still his strength. His ZZ motorbike confirms it. This piece from a pram, this backrest is from a computer chair, and this grill is from a jet ski. He says he wanted to disclose his club's fraternity and ingenuity. Thus, he requested Cuba on the Move to share his story.
Your program is awesome, indeed. Its name is Cuba on Movement. It's allied to what we think. We should always be on movement. We should always be doing something to improve ourselves, trying to do our best to improve for the society's sake.
Manuel is full of dreams today. He says COVID-19 times made him call a tour of Cuba off, but he still has his mind set on such idea. So far, he plans to arrange a bike rally, usually scheduled in December, and prepare motorcycle tours within the city to make a different kind of tourism. For the time being, he confesses his motorcycle has long ceased to be an object for him.
I say my bike is like a lady, like a man, like a beautiful woman with no so much makeup. Her beauty is external, but you got enchanted by her sweet talk, the affection she gives you. And I'd say she's like a girlfriend who persuades you she's the one, your ideal wife, for your life, right? For being faithful and be there in good and bad times.
The truth is that for many people, Cuba is an open-air rolling museum. And not only because everywhere you can find old American automobiles like new in use, but also because Cuba may be the paradise of old motorbikes like this, rolling like the first day.
Fabiola López, teleSUR, La Habana.
And with that story, we have come to the end of this news brief. But before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news sources of the latest world events, daily life stories of the people of the South, and break the hegemonic media dominance. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on X, and on LinkedIn. For teleSUR English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.